Platinum X here with Baldur's Gate 3 and a guide for like best race in class. Starting with elves, they get perception as a bonus, which is wisdom. You still at least want to have, some bonuses for your wisdom from the skills that are in the wisdom category, as well as wisdom saving throws. So having perception is a good bonus. They also get elven weapon training, longswords, short bows, and longbows. Now the one that really sticks out the most among this is longbow. You get dark vision 12 meters and Fey ancestry, advantage saving throws against being charmed, and cannot be put to sleep. The perception, that's where you spot ambushes, detect hidden items, things. So perception is a great skill to just get automatically. Now going on to the sub-race, High Elf basically just gives you a cantrip. But all of these offensive cantrips are based on intelligence. I mean, if you're going to be a High Elf wizard, that would be great. Get you an extra cantrip. And then the Wood Elf, really, to me, the Wood Elf is the overall best race. The perception, the stealth, and the fleet of foot giving you extra movement. So the Wood Elf has the fastest movement than anybody. Nobody else gets this extra movement speed. Wood Elf is the only one. Or a half Wood Elf as well. Also, Wood Elf Barbarian for the extra movement speed. Bard. I would probably use a High Elf for a Bard simply because I could then pick up Friends as a bonus cantrip and then focus, picking cantrips from being a Bard from the other available things. So being a High Elf, I would be able to just select Friends as a bonus. Cleric, definitely High Elf. That way, again, I could pick a bonus cantrip like Light or Illusion, something like that. Or even Firebolt. Because Shadowheart is a High Elf, or I mean not a High Elf, well, she's a half High Elf that starts with Firebolt. And you can use that to blow things up. Wood Elf Druid is one of my favorite. For the simple reason you get Longbow as a bonus proficiency. Not to mention, plus all the swords. Because the Druid is very limited in weapon proficiencies. Now there are a couple of magical longswords in the game that are finesse weapons. Rogue. Definitely a Wood Elf Rogue. Because again, Wood Elves already have more movement speed than anybody else. And if you go Thief subclass on the Rogue, you'll get 2 bonus actions. And as a second level Rogue, Rogues can use Dash, Hide, and Disengage as bonus actions. Which means you would be able to dash twice using your bonus actions and still have your action, which you could then dash again. So a Thief Rogue Wood Elf can cover more ground than anybody. That would be pretty insane how far they could move in a single turn. So having the longbow for a rogue, again with that combined extra movement, plus Wood Elves get stealth as a bonus proficiency as well. So perception, stealth, the extra movement, longbows, Wood Elves are great for rogues. When it comes to sorcerers, I would probably go High Elf versus Wood Elf, simply because the weapon proficiencies really aren't applicable. Attacking at range, you're going to be using a cantrip. A cantrip would be far more effective as a sorcerer than your longbow would be. So I would definitely go High Elf as a sorcerer to pick up an extra cantrip, like Friends. Not an offensive one that would fall under intelligence, but something like Light, Friends. Warlock, Same thing, I would go high elf for the extra cantrip, like go ahead and pick up friends, because both sorcerer and warlock are charisma based, and that friend spell does affect those charisma skills to give you advantage on the die rolls. Wizard, definitely high elf as well for the extra cantrip, but in that case you could go with an extra offensive cantrip. Alright, so that covers the elf. Tiefling, there's really only one. The first time I ever finished the game wasn't the first character I created. It's just the first character that I finished the game with was a Zerial Tiefling Bard. This cantrip right here gives you advantage on intimidation and performance checks. So I had a Zerial Tiefling Bard. And these other tieflings, like that, the Mage Hand, like, that just doesn't appeal to me. And the Produce Flame, it's not really all that. So again, Zerial Tiefling is really the only thing that appeals to me as one of the charisma-based classes. Karlach is a Tiefling Barbarian. So I've been there, done that many times. So again, the Zerial Tiefling Bard, it was a fun playthrough. Again, it was the first time I finished the game. I had a lot of fun with it. So that was definitely something that I would recommend. I used of the three subclasses, there's one that's more lore based, more skill based. You get more skills. The other two, you basically unlocked all martial weapon proficiencies, and you get a second attack at level 6. So they're more like swashbuckler type bards. And I've got over 2,000 hours, or I'm sorry, I've got just under 2,000 hours, like 1,913 hours. Now a warlock, a Zerial Tiefling warlock, you know, getting that bonus cantrip because warlocks are charisma based as well. So getting that thaumaturgy for intimidation and performance, that I could see that. Maybe even a sorcerer as well, especially if you go, which actually this just actually occurred to me, a Zerial Tiefling sorcerer draconic bloodline, because you would get a second resistance at level 6. Spells that deal fire damage are more powerful, and you become resistant to fire. Well, you're already resistant to fire, but you can go acid, lightning, cold, poison. Poison would probably be the most effective as far as getting that extra resistance. Aside from fire spells, acid maybe. Other than, you know, fire being most common, then poison, and then acid attacks against you. But lightning, there's very few things that use lightning. Now there is a major encounter that deals with a trophy regarding a boss fight in Act 3 of Baldur's Gate, so I'm not going to give any spoilers if you have not been there and done that. But that particular boss fight is major lightning. So, I mean, lightning resistance would definitely come in handy for that one encounter. There's really not much else that uses lightning against you. And cold as well. There's very little times I've encountered like somebody using cold against me. So that right there could be a very cool combo. And actually, honestly, like I said, it just occurred to me to do a Zerial Tiefling Sorcerer Draconic spell line, or a bloodline. Wizard, I just don't see. Tiefling. Drow. Now, all races have dialogue options. So until you actually play one of these races to see where all these dialogue options unlock, I mean, there's you know, it would take way too long to like go over every race and every encounter, you know, like every instance where they have, you know, unique dialogue. You just got to pick one and play it and, you know, do it. Playing a drow elf has never really appealed to me. The reason I'm doing this video is because I watched one where somebody thought drow elf was the best race. Like, to them, the drow elf was the best race. And I'm like, no. So that's why I'm doing a video now to kind of go over what each race would be good at. But again, the drow elf does get the perception bonus skill, the bonus cantrip dancing lights. They also get these proficiencies, but again, these drow web proficiencies like are pretty pointless. I mean, other than like druid or cleric, like bard and rogues, I mean, they're going to have those anyway. All the warrior classes, they're going to have those anyway. The superior dark vision, however, though, 24 meters. And again, they have ancestry advantage, saving throws against being charmed, and cannot be put to sleep, so that's good. But again, drow have really never appealed to me. So they really do not stick out as far as anything that I would, you know, recommend them for. And even the sub race doesn't really do any. I mean, it's just Lolth followers, non-Lolth followers. Human. Now, all these web proficiencies really, again, are pointless because any of your warrior classes are going to automatically have those. Cleric, you know, Shadowheart is a half high elf. So the half part being human, she has all these web proficiencies as well. There is a perk that you can get. I think it's called Sentinel. I could be mistaken, but I think it's called Sentinel, where any of those polearm type weapons, you use your reaction as kind of like a first strike against anybody entering your melee range. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But again, all of this is strength modifiers. So I mean, it would be useful for like maybe a cleric, because a cleric would not just automatically get these proficiencies unless they were either a half elf or human. I mean, most of the time if you're a cleric, you're probably going to want to use a shield. But you know, it's humans don't really appeal to me either. The only other thing they get, this right here, I was like, where is it at? Human versatility. This is an additional skill. So this is a bonus skill point that can be any skill. So available skills are based on the class that you pick. Not all skills are available to all classes. Some classes have very few skills that are available. The carrying capacity is increased by 1/4. That's really not that big a deal because, again, anything that you pick up, you can just send it to camp. Like, you don't have to walk around fully encumbered, which I can't even tell you how many playthroughs I did that. Just not using that send to camp feature. But definitely, you know, I definitely recommend using that send to camp feature so that you're not walking around encumbered. So again, that increased carrying capacity really is irrelevant. The bonus skill is nice, but going back to the wood elf, the wood elf gets stealth and perception as bonus skills right there. So the wood elf already is just outdoes the human by far. I'm not even going to go over classes with this because, again, it just, well, you know, doesn't appeal to me. Gith Yankee. This right here is one thing that makes the Gith Yankee superior really to all other races, because it gives you proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability and lasts until long rest. So that right there is giving you more skills than any other class probably. Well, bards get a lot of skills and rogues get good number of skills. But this would basically, like, you could just say intelligence, and that's going to give you all. I mean, let's look at skills here. There's only 1 strength, 3 dex, And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intelligence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wisdom. And then 4 charisma. So right there, after every long rest, you can go ahead and just use that for either intelligence, wisdom, charisma, to just automatically get proficiency in all of those skills under that ability. So that right there makes Githyanki really superior to all other races. I've wanted to play one, I just still have never played a Githyanki other than Lae'zel. Plus, there's a couple of things, like you start out with Mage Hand, and then you get like a jump. All these weapon proficiencies and armor proficiencies. Again, if you're a warrior class, like Lae'zel is a fighter, so all this is pointless. But definitely great swords. There's actually some Githyanki specific great swords, but again, that falls under strength. And I really don't see any class other than a warrior class where you would want to use a greatsword. So enough about Githyanki. Dwarves, the good thing about dwarves, they do have dark vision. The dwarven resistance, advantage on saving throws against poison, and resistance to poison damage. And then proficiencies in axes and hammers. I've started to play through the dwarven cleric, but having a cleric running around with battle axe or warhammer. But see, when I'm playing a dwarf, I kind of wanted to dual wield battle axe and a warhammer. And if I'm going to dual wield, well, I might as well go warrior, not cleric, or dual class him as warrior, like a fighter and a cleric. And if I dual class him as a fighter, well, then these proficiencies again are irrelevant. So I've loved dwarves. I've always loved dwarves. I'm short myself. I am like, well, I mean, I'm 5'4". So I've always loved dwarves. I've played dwarves in D&D back in the day when I was doing pen and paper, and again, having a dwarven warrior dual wielding an axe, like an axe and a hammer, you know, I love it. Plus, favorite books of all time was it was the Icewind Dale trilogy at first, and then the Dark Elf trilogy, you know, which are the books involving Drizzt Do'Urden. And Drizzt Do'Urden's closest friend was Brunor Battlehammer, a dwarf, with a human barbarian as kind of like a stepson. What was his name? Wolfgar or something like that. Anyway, so yeah, I've always been partial towards dwarves. But again, a dwarf cleric running around with battle axe and warhammer. Having said that, though, there are cleric subclasses. If you go war or tempest, well, they automatically unlock all martial weapon proficiencies anyway. But you could still go life, or not life, life. Life gets, a life cleric would unlock heavy armor proficiency. And then as a gold dwarf, you get an extra hit point every level. These really, I mean, unless you're playing like a spellcaster, like a wizard, warlock, or sorcerer, like the shield dwarf, like all this stuff is irrelevant. Like none of that makes sense unless you're playing one of those specific classes. And then of course the Dwegar have the superior dark vision. They've got the illusion and against being charmed and paralyzed. Advantage on those saving throws. Half-elf, again, just like human. I mean, they do have the Fey ancestry, dark vision, and then the ability to choose. Oh, they added drow in here. Nice. That must have been the last update. They added drow in here. But again, regardless of which elf you are going from the half, again, the wood elf gives the best bonuses with the extra movement and stealth is an automatic proficiency, where high elf is just a cantrip, and drow elf. You can't switch dancing lights on the drow half elf, but the high half elf you can select any cantrip. But again, I'm not really going to go into any half elf, anything over half elf, because it's just basically like human, except for you can pick which subrace of elf, and all have Fey ancestry. Halflings. Halflings, now this lucky right here seems good. I heard somebody else talk about it like, oh, it's great. Because again, any rolls, any ones, you get to re-roll. I played through, which actually my first playthrough on this profile to finish the game was a halfling. And that lucky, honestly, I was kind of regretting playing a halfling that entire playthrough. It was on tactician difficulty. I still finished the game, but I did not enjoy playing a halfling. I played a halfling specifically because of lucky, and again, it was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And this right here, Brave, you only have advantage against being frightened, which being frightened sucks. I mean, it basically makes your character, like, prone or stunned. I mean, it basically, like, just shuts down your character. So, I mean, you know, being brave does, you know, help out. But again, I just really did not enjoy playing a halfling. I was kind of regretting it. The Lightfoots have advantage on stealth. It doesn't give you the proficiency on stealth. You would still want to play probably, you know, a rogue, or at least a class that can pick stealth, or at least pick a background that has stealth. If you're going to go with a Lightfoot, and then the Strongheart is just like the Dwarf and gets the advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to poison damage. So actually, that kind of makes them equivalent to Dwarves right there. The Strongheart Halflings really has a leg up on the Dwarves for the Lucky and Brave, because if we go back to the Dwarves, they got Dark Vision. Did Halflings not even get Dark Vision? I mean, other than Dark Vision, it's just the weapon proficiencies. So honestly, the Strongheart Halfling is better than the Dwarf. Of course, the Dwarf can still get, you know, its subclass, the extra hit points. But yeah, I didn't enjoy the Halfling. So, the Gnome. Gnome Cunning, advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throw. That is great to have. Advantage, rolling 2 dice. Those saving throws are the kind that can, like, shut your character down, shut one of your guys down. Like, turn them against your party. Or, like, fear and stuff like that, the whole frightening. As far as the Rock Gnome, I mean, you get double proficiency in history. Whoopie-doo-dah. Forest Gnome, speak with animals. There are plenty. I mean, I heard somebody talk about this being a good because of the speak with animals. Speak with animals is good, absolutely. But there are plenty of speak with animal potions. Whether you find them, you're going to find plenty. You can buy them. They're cheap. They don't cost much. Alchemy, you can make them. So between finding them, buying them, making them, there are plenty of speak animal potions, and they last until long rest. So you should always have speak with animals active at all times. Because again, there are plenty of potions to be found, bought, or made. And they last until long rest. So again, the spell, speak with animals, is pointless. So both the Rock and Forest Gnome, no thank you. The Deep Gnome. I have done a playthrough with a Deep Gnome, and it was enjoyable. Because I played a dual class rogue fighter. Superior dark vision, 24 meters. Stone camouflage, advantage on stealth. Again, he was a rogue. He had stealth. He had then advantage on stealth. There is also an item in Act 3 when you get to Baldur's Gate. When you run into Wolverine and his gang outside of Baldur's Gate, there is an item that you can buy there that gives you that gives a gnome +2 on dexterity, allowing you to get up to a 22 dexterity. It also allows dwarves or halflings to get a +1, but again, only gnomes get the +2 from that item. So you would have the gnome cunning, the stone camouflage, superior dark vision, even if you're not a rogue though. If you take the background urchin, you get stealth and sleight of hand. Or criminal, you get stealth and deception. The playthrough I did as a deep gnome, I was a fighter rogue, 5 levels of fighter, and then 7 levels as rogue. Because even though you're sacrificing two feats there, you're picking up the feats in rogue from level 6 and 7 as a rogue. Uncanny dodge and something else, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is called, but there's 2 feats as a rogue for level 6 and 7. Again, one of them uncanny dodge, and then the other one is just as good as any feat. So actually, in the case of the rogue, honestly, it's better than any other feat on the list. So it's not really good to sacrifice those 2 rogue specific feats for feats on the list. So again, 5th level fighter to get your 2 attacks, 7 levels as a rogue to get the extra back stat or the extra sneak attack damage as a 7 level rogue, plus the uncanny dodge and whatever the other one is. I enjoyed that playthrough very much. So I definitely recommend a deep gnome. Dragonborn. Dragonborn is... when I did my first or only Dark Urge playthrough, because the Dark Urge just kind of defaults to the Dragonborn, I went ahead with Dragonborn, even though Dark Urge, you can play any race as Dark Urge. But again, it kind of defaulted to the Dragonborn, so I went ahead and played a Dragonborn. And I went Sorcerer. And the reason I did that is because of how cool it looked. Here, let me switch over to a male. Draconic Bloodline. Green. Yeah, that's it right there. That just looks so badass. I mean, that color, that dual colored is just really awesome looking. But that's why I did that. Other than that, like honestly, the Dragonborn is probably one of the worst races. Other than, actually, even the Halfling's better than Dragonborn. Even the other gnomes are better than Dragonborn. The Dragonborn gets nothing. The only thing the Dragonborn gets is, well, depending on what, color you go with, you get a breath weapon. Well, that breath weapon does not scale in damage as you level up. So, the breath weapon might be cool at, first 2 or 3 levels. But as you level up, the breath weapon is pointless and useless. Like, you're not going to use, it takes your action. You're not going to use your action to throw a breath weapon that only does 2d6 damage. If the breath weapon scaled with level, it would be a lot better. And then you get resistance to that damage type. Resistance, which the tieflings also get resistance. Well, only to fire though. So at least the Dragonborn can select different types. So again, the Dragonborn really just does not, like, even the humans are better than the Dragonborn. Like, honestly, the Dragonborn is the worst race. They're the coolest looking race, and the only reason I played one. But anyway, so I'm not even going to spend more time on the Dragonborn. I'm just going to move on now. Half-orcs, I've currently got a half-orc that I was playing around with. I haven't finished the playthrough yet. But the half-orcs, when you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you deal an extra die of weapon damage. So extra damage on critical hits, relentless endurance. When you get reduced to 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming downed. So this makes half-orcs just relentless and savage warriors. As the name says right there, relentless endurance, savage attacks, relentless and savage warriors. And they automatically get intimidation as a skill proficiency. The current playthrough I'm doing as a half-orc, I was going to do a Dark Urge playthrough, but the Dark Urge automatically has the Haunted One background that also has intimidation. So I was like, well, that sucks. I didn't do a half-orc Dark Urge playthrough. Now, as far as that savage attacks being critical hits, though, you want to focus on, like, the champion subclass of fighters, which reduces your critical by 1. And also, I'm going to do a dual class. Fighter, rogue, half-orc. Because the rogue will also be able to have items and, you know, situations that reduce their critical. So dropping the critical, I mean, with my rogue fighter from the, I think it was either the halfling or the deep gnome, I was critting as low as 13 or 14. So with a half-orc, getting your crit that low, I mean, you'll just be doing insane damage and just absolutely wrecking stuff. But also, like a half-orc paladin would probably be good. But again, I don't know what opportunities a paladin would have as far as reducing the critical. But anyway, that's just my take on the races and which classes to use for the races. But again, it is Dungeons & Dragons. It is a role-playing game. And it is completely and totally up to your preference. Regardless of what anybody else tells you, play what you want to play. What appeals to you, but again, you will not know what unique dialogue options pop up for any particular race until you actually play through the game with that race. So anyway, I hope this helps. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you do like and subscribe. Give it a thumbs up. See you next time.